The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So, 58 years ago today, Sonny Jurgensen completed 10 of 16 passes for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns as the then Redskins beat the New York Giants. So what, you say? Yeah, kind of middling stats there. Yeah, 3 touchdown passes is impressive. 145 yards. What's the big deal? The big deal is that the Redskins scored 10 touchdowns that day. And to this day, the 72-41 final is the highest scoring game in NFL history. And I'll take a deep dive into that into the next hour. We are one day away from the 50th anniversary of the Clint Longley ruining Thanksgiving game. I don't think we need to spend too much time on that, do we? There are other things to talk about, including the kicking situation for the Washington Commanders as they head into this game against Tennessee on Sunday, a game that they should win. They are 5.5-point favorites to do that and end this losing streak, which has now reached 3 games. And what's curious about the kicking situation is this. Austin Seibert, I think it's Seibert, who missed a field goal and, more importantly, 2 extra points, one of which could have tied the game in the final minute, has gone back on injured reserve. Or actually, he wasn't even on injured reserve the first time around. He missed 2 games with a hip injury. And you know, he comes back, and the presumption is that he's fully healthy. It's not like they were desperate for a kicker because Zane Gonzalez in the 2 games that he kicked was fine. He didn't miss any field goals, didn't miss any extra points, and there didn't seem to be a great urgency to get Seibert back. I know that a starter plays when he's ready to play, and they said, we watched him in practice all week, and we were confident, and we felt like he could go out there and kick. Well, he did kick, but not very well. The shanked field goal, which went off his ankle, and you can argue whether the last extra point was a botched snap or not actually a botched snap, but a low snap. And, was that the issue in the missed kick? He also, though, on his own, missed an extra point, and that changed the complexion of the game as well. And, this is one of those situations where a guy who's bounced around the league, he wasn't like a stable kicker. He had been with a variety of teams. He'd been cut by the Jets. The reason they brought him in was when they practiced against the Jets, they liked the way he was kicking in the rain. So they brought him in, and he'd been excellent. First game, he set a record. Kicked 7 field goals as they beat the Giants. But, he's not exactly established in the NFL. He's not gone to the Hall of Fame as a kicker, and maybe he wasn't 100% when he told them that he was. I mean, sure, you can watch him in practice, and practice is a lot different than a game. You can try and simulate game conditions, but it's not game conditions. And they felt like they saw enough from him that he was going to be okay. And, he probably is looking at Zane Gonzalez and saying, I've lost my job to other kickers in the past. Maybe I don't want him to get too comfortable with Zane Gonzalez. And then if I tell them I'm not ready to go, they'll look at that and say, well, the guy's not willing to play hurt for his team and yada, yada, yada. So maybe he actually hurt the team by playing on Sunday against the Dallas Cowboys. This was Dan Quinn after the game asked about going for 2 in that situation. Of course, in retrospect, you always say, you should have gone for 2 rather than throw a kicker out there who had already missed a field goal and an extra point. But Quinn said he absolutely never thought about going for 2 in that situation to go ahead in that game in the final seconds.
No, I thought if after we score, we'd go for 1. And the reason behind that, I thought, let's get back into it, but we don't have to decide it on this play. And so that was where I thought, let's go. And then, hey, Joe, we got 1 stop, we'll get it. And then at the coin toss, let's go through the whole process again and reset it. So I thought in that way, that was the right call on that. As obviously, you're not factoring in the other part of things, but that was my thought going into it. The previous one, if we had scored, we had to kick a field goal. I wanted to kick the field goal in prior to the 2 minutes so we could use that, have the other timeout. So when you're down 2 scores, We're kind of a little more strategic to get a kick in prior to a certain time. So that's what we had told Jaden in the offense. Let's get it in before this time. And so it gave us a chance to come back to it, get the stop, to go, and then the big one to Terry. So, but I was thinking one the whole time. Sorry, long-winded answer to your question.
And the question of health doesn't really enter there either, because Seibert had kicked a 51-yard field goal. Now, is it possible that he was injured in between the 51-yard field goal and the attempt for the extra point there? I don't know. But in a circumstance where they probably should have kicked it out of the end zone earlier, rather than what they called a dirty kick, which wound up being returned for a touchdown, was health a factor there? Were they thinking, we don't know if Seibert can get it out of the end zone, so let's play it this way? We don't know. As far as what happened in the game and what happened with Seibert, he did stand up and talk to the media after the game, and as he indicated in the line of questioning, he felt 100% took the blame, didn't blame it on the low snap, took the blame for missing the extra point, but also, as you'll hear here, says he was 100% ready to go.
I just want to play better for my teammates, Definitely don't want to do that. Just wasn't striking well, but it means a lot to me to be here with these guys. So just want to put my best foot moving forward.
That final extra point, it was a low snap. How much of a difference did that make?
Didn't make a difference at all. It's on me.
How did you feel coming in? You missed a couple weeks.
Felt fine. I made the decision to play, and here we are.
A couple more, go.
How did you feel? How it feels when you're kicking well. When you're in that kind of mood, did you feel something different with yourself?
No. Just didn't play well.
That's one.
What happened on the outside? What happened on the outside kick?
I should have hit a little bit more left. Hit it right to the guy. That's what you get when that happens. So that falls on me too.
And on the kick return for Tor, were you trying to get it out of the end zone, or what were you trying to do on that one?
Hit a dirty ball, make him field it.
Yeah, dirty kick. Now, good for him for taking responsibility for the missed kicks, but you also heard him say in that what we call soundbite there, you also heard him say, I made the decision to play. Watching him practice, the medical, all that can only take you so far. The actual person has to tell you how he feels. And I'm guessing that he felt healthy enough that maybe he could give it a go, but wasn't 100% certain that he was going to do it. But he was going to try and gut it out, and at times he did. He kicked the 51-yard field goal. But, did he hurt the team by maybe protecting himself or trying to protect himself a little bit? Like, there's a guy kind of breathing down my neck here who's doing a pretty good job, and I don't want this to get too far because they may settle in on him. And, I miss a couple of kicks in practice. Do they look at that? And, kickers are coming and going all the time in the NFL, and he's been around. He's been with various teams. So that could have played a factor there. And as we look back on the game, look, so many crazy things happen in the game. You could say it came down to the missed extra point, but there were other things that happened that shouldn't have happened in the game. It should have never been in that position. But even still, this is going to be a big question for Dan Quinn at his news conference today. Was Austin Seibert 100% when you sent him in the game? Was he re-injured during the game? Is it possible that happened? And maybe he'll say that, okay? So, and if he was re-injured in the game, did you know he was re-injured before he attempted that last extra point? Did you know he was injured before you told him to have a dirty kickoff on a kickoff that was really dirty coming the other way, 102 yards for a touchdown? All those things have to be asked today, and I'll be very interested to hear what Dan Quinn has to say, because I think generally he's been honest this year. Now, he did say going into the game last week, he said honestly and truthfully, I think was the word he used, Jaden Daniels is not injured anymore. And the way he ran, he didn't look like he was injured anymore. He ran very well. But was he playing hurt the previous 2 weeks where they lost those games even though he played well enough to beat the Giants in his second game back after the injury. That was after the Hail Mary to beat Chicago. But is it possible that a healthy Marcus Mariota might have comfortably won a couple of the games that they lost? I don't know. But this is now a little bit of an issue here. And did Austin Seibert do them wrong by claiming, and you heard him say that there, he said, I made the decision to play. Did he do them wrong by making the decision to play in a game which was decided in large part by a missed extra point? It's not to say that if he kicks the extra point that the Cowboys don't win the game in overtime. That's entirely possible too. But is it possible that he really hurt the team by doing that? All right, here's an interesting situation. And the NFL loves this stuff because bad weather brings eyeballs to the television set. And we have the 3 Thanksgiving games tomorrow, kind of duds. Chicago against Detroit, division game. But, the way the Lions have been playing, they should pretty much blow their doors off. And then we have the lowly Giants. They're an absolute mess, playing the Cowboys, who may not even have Cooper Rush available. They may be down to their third-string quarterback, Trey Lance, to start this game at 4:30. And then you have the Green Bay Packers, who are surging, playing the warm weather Miami Dolphins. Now, the warm weather Miami Dolphins did have to go and play a very, very cold weather game, which they lost last year in Kansas City, so they have a little experience with this. But, we're talking about temperatures in the 20s tomorrow night, and I think the NFL purposely looked at that because it's a big TV day for the NFL, the Thanksgiving day, where maybe 2 games isn't enough, and people who are going to want to eat the turkey sandwich at 10 o'clock at night and watch that game, they're going to be there, and they're going to have eyeballs on the set, and the fact that it's bad weather and it's Miami freezing is going to be attractive to them. And then the game that wraps up the weekend, the Sunday night game, well, the weekend before the Monday night, I should say, but there is a Sunday night game. And what do you know? It's being played in Buffalo, where the 49ers come in limping because Brock Purdy didn't play last week with a bad shoulder, and it's not certain he'll be able to go on Sunday. They're calling for, in Buffalo, as happens this time of year, lake-effect snow with more than a half foot of snow possible for areas near and south of the stadium. Travel could be difficult to get there. Bills are nice and warm and cozy. They've been off for an entire week. They're coming off the enormous win over the Kansas City Chiefs, where they overcame the odds and finally knocked off a team which has been their nemesis. And Josh Allen's maybe cemented his case, or certainly made a better case for himself to be MVP. So you're talking about wind gusts possibly 30 miles an hour. Temperatures will feel anywhere from the single digits to the lower teens. Gusty winds will make kicking almost impossible. The Bills, remember last year, they had their wild card game against the Steelers postponed because of bad weather. Remember November of 2022, going back 2 years, the Browns were supposed to play the Bills at the stadium on that day, but NFL officials decided to move it to Detroit inside, and then a month later, an historic blizzard dropped a big amount of snow in nearby locations. Motorists were stranded, and there was a state of emergency. So this is what the NFL likes to see, and it's playing very well into their hands with national TV games scheduled both tomorrow night and on Sunday night. It will certainly, I would think, help the Buffalo Bills, hurt the reeling 49ers, who are, believe it or not, chasing the Commanders, a team that's been to the Super Bowl and was expected to make a run at it again this year and may still. And here are the Bills riding high, and maybe this is their year. Maybe, things like this are playing into their hands, and this is an organization that has had the experience of going to 4 straight Super Bowls and losing them all. And I've said this a million times. That's one of the greatest achievements in the history of sports. And I was very lucky in my lifetime to say that to Marv Levy, who took his Bills to 4 straight Super Bowls, even though they didn't win any of them. The fact that they were able to get off the mat 3 times and get back was very, very impressive. Ryan Fitzpatrick, too young to have played on those teams, maybe too young to even remember those teams, but spent a number of the years that he played in the NFL playing for the Buffalo Bills, and was on the Rich Eisen show yesterday to explain just what this would mean to Buffalo Nation if this is the year that they finally break through.
It's hard to describe. I'll say this, Josh Allen is the perfect quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, and it goes well beyond his playing ability. It's his personality. It's how much he cares for the city. It's how he holds and carries himself every single day. And he understands, deep down, he understands how important it is for that city, for him to bring a Super Bowl to them. And I know that that's his strongest desire in the world. I would be out there amongst them shirtless for sure if that were to happen. And it would be a wild scene because they live, eat, sleep Bills football out there.
So you would definitely make it for the parade, is what you're saying.
Oh, you better believe it. I mean, this is, people have been waiting their whole lifetime for this. And this is a generational thing. You're not, a Bills fan, then you move somewhere. Your kids become Bills fans if you were a Bills fan. Doesn't matter where you live. It's probably the most fun I have going through the airport every week. When I walk by a gate that says Buffalo or Rochester, or I see somebody with a Bills hat on, they wear it all the time. They wear it on their sleeve, and they absolutely love being Bills fans, and it's truly part of their identity.
Yeah, from a relatively small market, Western New York, I am amazed at the number of Bills fans that there are. Now, some of them have been high-profile people through the media. Tim Russert used to play up the Bills fandom big time. He sadly passed away quite a few years ago. Wolf Blitzer is from Buffalo, and he talks about his fandom there. So maybe that has a lot to do with it. But you do seem to see an inordinate amount of Buffalo fans, and I think Fitzpatrick is right. If you live there at one point, doesn't matter where you live now, you're still a Buffalo Bills fan. People move from place to place, and it changes. So the fandom there is insane. They do have a hockey team there, but they don't have basketball anymore. They had the Braves for a while, and they don't have a baseball team, and maybe never will because of the weather there. But the fandom for the Buffalo Bills is off the charts. And you look at the franchise, and it's been marked by disappointment. It's great to get to the Super Bowl, but when you lose one, the devastation of it is just so intense. And they did it 4 straight times and didn't win any of them. Now, probably their best shot was the first one, where you had the field goal going wide right and a chance to beat the Giants. That's a 48-yard field goal. If it goes through, maybe it's different. Maybe the Bills never get back, but they always have that one Super Bowl. But the next 3 years, they were pretty much overmatched. They were overmatched by the Redskins, and they were overmatched by the Cowboys 2 straight years, especially that first year that Dallas made. In the second year, they didn't run Emmitt Smith very much in the first half, but in the second half they took over. And, if you look at and you might call that a dynasty. I know it's hard to look at it that way since they lost all 4. And, the team that loses the Super Bowl probably feels more devastated than any other team in the NFL. But I again, think that's incredible fortitude. It's an incredible testimony to the coaching ability of Marv Levy and the great players he had who just happened to run into some better teams. One of them, the Redskins, one of the best teams in the Super Bowl era. That's been said many times, the 91 Redskins. And then the Cowboys, if you look at them winning 3 out of 4, that was a great team too. And that's just the way things panned out. They couldn't get by the Giants, and if the field goal goes through, then, maybe it's an entirely different story. But interesting perspective there from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Coming up, a little preview of the game. Jay Gruden does it every week for the Clean Pocket podcast, which is put together by Colt McCoy, his former quarterback here. And he has the full breakdown of what he expects to happen on Sunday at Northwest Stadium. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
In the Times today, Liam Griffin has a fun look. I guess you could call it fun. A look at what has happened to sports in November in this town. It went from euphoria to sadness over a relatively short period of time, less than 4 weeks. Remember, first part of this month, first game that the Commanders played this month, they beat the New York Giants. They're rolling along, right? They're 7-2. They came off the game against the Chicago Bears, and although there were 2 tough games coming up against Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Who said they couldn't win, right? Who said? Jaden Daniels, the toast of the town. Well, since that day, they've lost 3 in a row. The Washington Capitals get off to a smoking start, and Alex Ovechkin is hot as a pistol. 15 goals to lead the league. And a week ago Monday, broke his leg. Isn't going to be back likely until after the first of the year. Capitals dropped 2 in a row, though they did win the other night in Florida. And then you had the Washington Spirit, which made it all the way to the championship game, but they lost to the Orlando Pride 1-0. And it's been kind of a run through all of that. Now, that can turn around as we move into December, as the Commanders will play on December 1st against the Tennessee Titans. Jay Gruden has been previewing games all year long, as he does it for a podcast that is run by Colt McCoy called The Clean Pocket. And this was the Gruden look at what he expects to happen on Sunday at Northwest Stadium.
What has happened to the Commanders? The last 3 weeks, I'll tell you what's happened. Their third down percentage has gone way down. They're 12 for 38 in their last 3 games on third downs. They've given up 10 sacks. Their time of possession's only been averaging 24 minutes per game, so they're not possessing the football, which has given the other team many opportunities to punch the ball in. They're not creating turnovers, and they're giving the ball away. So those 3, there's a lot of things that you can point to for the Commanders. Their play calling maybe, but it's a consistency on third down, which eliminates possessing the ball, which gives the other team the ball, so their time of possession is low. Turnovers and sacks have become an issue as well. So moving forward against the Tennessee Titans, Tennessee's coming off an emotional win against Houston at Houston. A big division game, big win for Brian Callahan to get off the snide a little bit. Their turnover margin as well has been abysmal all year, but last week they got away with still turning the ball over 3 times and winning a football game. So what I expect in this game, and what I said last week for the Cowboy-Commander game, I said the Commanders had to jump on them early. You got to get on them early, give the Cowboys no chance to believe they can win. That did not happen. The Commanders had unbelievable field position in the first quarter and almost the first half, and only got 3 points. So that was a big-time problem for the Commanders. You have to convert these excellent field position opportunities and put the team out of their misery early. You let the Cowboys hang around, and lo and behold, the Cowboys win the football game. That can't happen against Tennessee at home. You got to come out of the gate fast. You got to bust out of there, jump on them early, and let Tennessee believe there's no chance that they can win. Otherwise, they have a chance. They have good players. Tony Pollard, that Calvin Ridley. Will Levis is starting to slowly improve his football game a little bit. And defensively, they have one of the better 3 techniques in football in Jeffrey Simmons and a hell of a pass rusher in Harold Landry and a young secondary, which is improving on a weekly basis. So this by no means throw out the records. I know Washington's 7-5 and Tennessee's 3-8. You think this is an easy win, Washington? It's not an easy win unless you jump at them early and get on top of them and keep your foot to their throat and don't let them get up. I tell you what, if I'm Dan Quinn, I am preaching urgency right now. I mean, on every snap, because after this game, you got a well-needed bye for your offensive line, for your entire football team, your staff. You're a little bit worn out, but you have to come in the building on Wednesday fresh and ready to go, and you got to be all in for this Tennessee Titan game. This has to be your Super Bowl. I mean, this is a make-or-break game for the Commanders. They're 7-5. They still control their own destiny as far as the playoffs are concerned. They have a lead in the wild card race, so they have to get this win at home against the Titans, a 3-8 team, and it starts with being urgent and everything that you do in the building starting on Wednesday. Yes, defending Tennessee is going to be tough, but it starts with the running game. I really believe Bill Callahan's going to come in with a vengeance, trying to get that offensive line going and get Tony Pollard going. I know Spears is out. I don't know if he's going to play, but Pollard will be a focal point of that team. And then that leads to the play actions and the big play ability of Will. Will has a cannon of an arm. He just can't give out of his own way from time to time. Early in the season, they were in games. They had a chance to win games. And he threw the ball to the other team or fumbled the ball for no rhyme or reason. So turnovers have been a major problem for Will. If he can rein those in, hand the ball to Pollard, hit Calvin Ridley on a couple shot plays, they'll be right in this game till the end. So it'll be very important for Washington to try to create some momentum with some turnovers and try to get the offense the ball back in good field position like they did against Dallas, but Washington did not convert. So get after Will Levis, rush the hell out of him, stop the run, and let's create some turnovers. There has been significant dip in his play, quite honestly, and it's not all on Jaden. Now, the offensive line has struggled a little bit more. Receivers have struggled to get separation, and it just has not flowed smoothly like it did early in the year. Early in the year, they had the run game going, the zone reads off of it, the play action. They're always in 1st and 10, 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2, 1st and 10, 2nd and 3. Now, all of a sudden, they're facing some adversity, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, and they're not converting those downs, which leads to punts and the other team possessing the ball. So they got to do a much better job on 1st and 2nd down and stay in 3rd and makeable so Jaden can convert those. Because when they possess the football, the ability that Jaden has to run, use his legs like he did against the Cowboys on that long touchdown run, they're still a dangerous football team, but they got to stay out of 3rd and long, and they got to produce on 3rd down more often than not. The last 3 weeks has been terrible for them on 3rd down, which has led to 0-3. Yeah, their offensive line's a little banged up. Now B-Rob's hurt. Austin Eckler's in the concussion protocol. I don't think he's going to play because this is his second one, I believe, this year. So he's probably going to be out. So I think what that has to happen is they have to transition into more of a passing team on 1st and 2nd down as opposed to their inside zones and their zone reads. You know, I think you have to play to your strengths. And the way Jaden finished that game off against Dallas, taking him down the field twice for touchdowns to keep him back in the game, obviously the lucky one to Terry McLaurin, which is just horrible coverage by Dallas, but it proves that he can handle it within the pocket. And then you can use his legs scrambling and getting 1st downs in that nature, and then surprise them with a zone read or a inside zone. But I think the strength of their football team moving forward offensively has got to be throwing the football to Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown and Zach Ertz. I think the key to this football game is how Washington starts. I mean, when you lose 3 games in a row, people start to, look, cross-eyed at each other. Hey, what's going on here? What's going on here? They got to get off to a fast start so they can have that camaraderie like I saw early in the year. Guys blocking for each other, high-fiving everybody. They got to have some success early, get their hearts beaten, and they can finish the game off against Tennessee. And for Tennessee, you got to just continue to get after them and stop the running game and then get after Jaden with Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons, and hopefully they turn the ball over. But for Tennessee offensively, protect the ball, Will. Just protect the ball. Washington's offense is struggling. You don't have to score in every time. I could see this game being a 20-17 type game, and whoever has the ball last might win it with the field goal. But protect the football, Tennessee. Get your running game going, and then take a shot when it's there. And I think there will be some shot opportunities because if Washington has a weakness on defense, it's their corner play, especially if Marshawn Lattimore doesn't play.
Yeah, well, if it does come down to a field goal, it's going to be Zane Gonzalez as Austin Seibert has gone on injured reserve, meaning he's out for at least 4 games. He's like, the 4th kicker. True, he didn't miss in the 2 games that he kicked for Seibert, but you have to be concerned about that. As far as the running game goes, yeah, I think you could probably rule out Eckler for this game, and he's been a huge weapon for them. And then Brian Robinson not being able to play. And if this is a low-scoring game, you're looking at Chris Rodriguez carrying the load. He was dropped back down to the practice squad last week, but he's back. So that's going to be a real issue for them. And what he's saying about, and what Gruden's saying about starting early, that was the key to the success early on. They were scoring on just about every drive. You were never punting. And in this past game, they punted 6 times. So that's becoming a problem. And for a team that was very, very efficient, holding on to the ball for a long period of time, getting big runs from Jaden Daniels, and the running game was clicking and the passing game and all that. And even in the early part of the season when he wasn't finding Terry McLaurin, the first 2 games, they were still winning, So this is something that's very concerning right now. And something else, not that Jaden Daniels has been terrible in the last few games, but he has not looked like he did in the first 7 games of the season, the first 9 games of the season. But the last 3, he has not looked as good. And Sean Salisbury, who played at USC, played in the NFL for a number of years, started for a while for the Minnesota Vikings, then went to ESPN. He now does sports radio in Houston. And C.J. Stroud has been sort of the model for Jaden Daniels this year. That you look at what C.J. Stroud did last year for Houston and say, wow, that's seemingly a once-in-a-lifetime thing. But now look what Jaden Daniels is doing. Daniels knows Stroud. They talk from time to time. They're from the same part of the country in California. And it looked like we were getting a rerun of that. And may still, a lot of football left to play in this season. But this could be a cautionary tale because off of last year, that incredible rookie season that C.J. Stroud had, he's starting to slip some. And last week they lost to Tennessee. And Salisbury, who does sports radio in Houston, sees all of his games and is very close to the situation, gave this analysis of what's going wrong with Stroud right now on the Dan Patrick Show.
Yes, Stroud has regressed. And I think part of it's the collateral damage and the constant hits where your eyes, Dan, go from seeing the coverage to feeling the rush to now seeing the rush and feeling the coverage. And that you can't succeed that way. He is a great player with great his mid-level throw, everything he does, he's got a chance to be special. But he's got to get out of that mode, and you got to get the trust back to back. The problem is, how do you trust five guys up front where the guy who's supposed to be the best tackle or one of the 3 or 4 best in the league jumps off sides like a 7-year-old in this first Pop Warner game every friggin' week? And when you continue to take the cumulative hits, eventually the human nature is you're going to start doing things different. Ball's going to come out premature. And the one thing Stroud's doing different this year, Dan, he's missing the easy stuff. I always say the best quarterbacks, Manning, Breeze, Brady, Warren Moon of all time, made the ordinary play look ordinary. We're not making the ordinary play here look ordinary. And extraordinary, you can't live there. Even Mahomes, with all the off-schedule stuff, with Andy Reid, what do? Dan? Hit screens, hit shallow crosses, hit flat routes on 3rd and 3. Kelsey on a bang-off option route to sit in the hole. And right now, CJ's missing throws, whether it's, and I know he's not going to point the finger. He has not played as well. And Bobby Slowick. It's almost like with Mixon and with the injuries and with their success last year, they're playing not to lose. They've lost some aggressiveness, and so has Stroud. So he has taken a step back. Mechanics you deal with in the offseason. He has got to get back into the simple stuff of making the ordinary play. That being said, until they do stuff up front with pre-snap penalties, all the stuff that makes you go nuts on a football team that gives you no shot to sustain success, they beat one good team, Buffalo. One good team. Other than that, every win's been a team sub 500, and every other loss has been against a playoff caliber team. So they got a lot to do. Dan, he's going to be a great player, but he's taken a step back, and I think it's a cumulative of a lot of things. And this team has not handled success as well as they handled failure going into last year as a 3-win team. And here they are, a team that was supposed to be a Super Bowl type team, and they're playing nothing like it. They're going to be an easy out if they don't get this fixed.
Ooh, does that kind of sound hauntingly familiar? Not as aggressive, right? They haven't looked as aggressive as they did earlier in the season. And the penalties are hurting them. They had 8 big penalties against Dallas last week, false starts, things like that. And there is that regression, and it's natural. You know, these quarterbacks, it's not a straight line to success. They struggle at the beginning, and teams get a book on them. And Jaden Daniels has talked about that. You know, he's facing a lot more 3rd and long than he used to, and that's hurt them as well. They can get back on track this week against a 3-win team. That might be exactly what they need. But what you're hearing Sean Salisbury say about C.J. Stroud are some of the things that you are starting to see about Jaden Daniels. Not that he's been terrible, not that he's been a turnover machine. And he did run very well last week against Dallas. They got to get back to doing more of that, get him outside the pocket. But this is not an easy position to play. And I think there's no case of anybody, stepping right in. And look at the succession that the Green Bay Packers have gone through. Even Brett Favre, he didn't start when he was in Atlanta and didn't start right away when he was in Green Bay. And took over because there was an injury to Don Mikowski. And then the 3 years that Aaron Rodgers sat, that probably helped him. Jordan Love sat for 3 years. That probably helped him. So quarterback being thrown into the fire, and it takes time. And, I don't want to say it's going to definitely go this way, but just look at another player on the Commanders roster wearing number 18. Marcus Mariota was also a Heisman Trophy winner, the 2nd pick of the draft, and initially had some success with the Tennessee Titans, but you see where he is now. He's a journeyman backup, and I don't think that's going to happen with Jaden Daniels, but it was never going to be as good as it was in the early part of the season. And, you talk about teams that they have beaten. They have not all been very good teams. Arizona's got a winning record. Cincinnati has struggled greatly. The opening game was a loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it was a pretty lopsided loss. And what happened in that game, even though Jaden Daniels looked good running the football, they did not look like the team that they would become in the upcoming weeks. Meantime, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback, Baker Mayfield, has problems off the field. And this is, as we head into Thanksgiving and it's all about family, you hate to hear stories like this, but Mayfield, according to the New York Post, has escalated the legal battle over $12 million allegedly owed to him by a financial firm owned by his father. Mayfield has sued his father's firm, Camwood Ventures, plus subsidiaries, for $12 million in funds that went missing. His father is the majority owner of Camwood, and his brother Matt is also a stakeholder in this. So this is a real family feud. And the gist of it is that it looks like Camwood was handling his money, and they appropriated $12 million, and probably came at a signing bonus or something like that. But Mayfield, in his lawsuit, claimed that Camwood took $12 million from him without his knowledge and transferred it to several subsidiaries between 2018 and 2021. 2018 is when he was playing with Cleveland. The money, the suit alleges, was used to cover operating expenses of the business. So it sounds like he wasn't paying close attention, trusted his father with the money. Father maybe ran into some financial difficulties, took $12 million of his money and put it into something that he's not exactly sure about. And in the lawsuit, it says, to date, Camwood has not repaid even $1 under the settlement agreement. Defendants have failed to refinance their existing loan, and defendants have not provided the plaintiffs access to their books and records. As a result, the plaintiffs have been left with no choice, the plaintiffs being Mayfield and his wife, no choice but to file suit for breach of the settlement agreement to recover the assets improperly taken from them. Boy, nothing divides a family like money. And this is a really sad case for Baker Mayfield. He's made plenty of money playing football, but I don't think he can afford to take a $12 million chunk out of what he's made, and hopefully this will all get resolved. I don't think, doesn't sound like, everybody will be cozily sitting around the Thanksgiving table tomorrow. We'll see about that. Coming up, we'll take a further look at what's going to happen on Sunday at Northwest Stadium as the kicking issue is taking on a little bit of a different twist now with Austin Seibert going on IR. We'll get to that and much more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Oh, there's a lot of drama in the NFL, I guess as there always is, but a lot of drama as we head into December. There are teams that are playing meaningful games, including the Commanders, who don't usually play meaningful games in December. In fact, if they win Sunday, it'll be the first time they will have had 8 wins through 13 games since 1996, when they started out that season 7-1. They went to Philadelphia, beat the Eagles to get to 8-3, and well, I guess after 13 games they were 8-5 and kind of slid and beat Dallas in the final game at RFK to at least finish with a winning record, 9-7, but they missed the playoffs. So, it's exciting in that they are still very much in the hunt going into December. They hold the 7th seed. As they say, they control their own destiny. The question is, will they be able to get back to where they were prior to this 3-game losing streak? And what about the kicking situation, which has become curious? Austin Seibert has gone on injured reserve, meaning he's going to miss at least 4 games, and they only have, 5 left to go? Was he healthy enough to kick? He said after the game Sunday, he made the decision to play and said he felt fine and took full responsibility for missing the 2 extra points and the field goal. But, was he fully up front with the team? This guy's been bouncing around the league for a while, hasn't had job security, and looks at Zane Gonzalez, who was fine in the 2 games that he missed with a hip injury, and said, I better get back out there. I know I don't feel 100%, but, I've kicked before with a little bit of pain, and I feel like I can gut this through. And he did perform well at times. He kicked a 51-yard field goal, and he did what he was told on the kickoff where it was returned for a touchdown. He called it a dirty kickoff. It, bounced at like the 2-yard line and got returned for a touchdown. But, the question is, was he fully up front? And if he was feeling pain, if he was uncertain, would he have done the team much better good by saying to them, I don't really feel it. I need another week. Have Zane kick. But that's not what you do in the NFL. And if the team looks at you and they say, well, we think you're ready to go, we watch you in practice, you look fine, you're not going to say, well, I'm not fine, I can't go. So, this is probably a trickle down from what happened when they signed Brandon McManus in the offseason, and he had been fine with the Jacksonville Jaguars, veteran kicker, and then it was found out that there was a civil suit against him for sexual harassment of 2 flight attendants on a team flight to London last year with the Jaguars. They had to let him go, and had he been with the team all year, maybe there wouldn't be all this kicking drama. But they got it again, and Zane Gonzalez is back, and we'll find out more today from Coach Dan Quinn if, in fact, that Seibert was re-injured in the game, or, did they make a mistake putting him out there when he wasn't 100% healthy. Game of the weekend should be in Baltimore, and it's like old school. It's like a time we haven't had in the NFL for a long, long time. You have 2 players who are playing a position which has become somewhat obsolete in recent years, and now maybe both of them, certainly one of them, are in discussion for MVP. Saquon Barkley, who had 255 yards the other night, and then you also have Derrick Henry, who's having a phenomenal year for the Ravens. He had 140 yards. So they go head-to-head. And this is a big game for the Ravens, coming off their win in Los Angeles on Monday. They have to, it's a short week, but they're going to be at home on Sunday. And Albert Breer of SI.com on yesterday with the Dan Patrick Show, looking at the Ravens and looking at Lamar Jackson, who probably is feeling a lot of pressure right now to come through and get this team to a Super Bowl, where he's being talked about as a third-time MVP, but so far hasn't been able to deliver the big one and get them to a Super Bowl. This is Breer yesterday with Dan Patrick.
And one of the cool things about the Ravens, Dan, is they've continued to get better over the course of the year. They were turning over 60% of their offensive line. On defense, they lost their edge rushers. They lost, Patrick Queen. And essentially, they were gambling on their ability to develop people through their program. And it went to the coaching staff, too, on replacing Mike McDonald with Zach Orr. And so I think that's why this is a team that I think you say has been ascending, that Steeler game notwithstanding over the course of the year. And so, I think it's fair to think they're going to be better at the end of December than they are right now, and then they should be better at the end of January than they are at the end of December. So, yes, I think they're a Super Bowl contender.
And it feels like we're top heavy. There's 3 teams that are could go to the Super Bowl in the AFC, and there's 2 in the NFC.
Or the Lions and Eagles, you'd say?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say, you have those teams that it's if they sneak in, could they catch fire, right? So that'd be Cincinnati and San Francisco, right? If one of those teams sneaks in, those teams have been to Super Bowls. So could those teams get in as the 6 or 7 seed, and then all of a sudden you look up and they've beat a couple teams that you would have expected them to beat, and they're in the conference title game,
And I want to be fair to the Packers and the Vikings as well.
Right. Yeah, and I think the Packers and the Vikings to me are such an awesome story of a football operation that's sort of turned things over. And the amazing thing about them is that you lose 2 guys you could argue are the most important players. All due respect to Justin Jefferson over the last decade for that franchise, right? Because the longevity thing with Sam Darnold and Danielle Hunter. Well, they've got younger, and you could argue maybe better at those 2 spots, replacing Kirk Cousins with Sam Darnold, replacing Danielle Hunter with Andrew Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard and Dallas Turner. I think they've set themselves up long term. Do I think they can win a Super Bowl or get to a Super Bowl with their issue at tackle right now, with some of the things they've been working through injury-wise? Maybe not, but I'm really impressed with what they've done, and I think they're set up much better for the next 5 years for it. The Packers still feel like they've got a high ceiling, so I'm with you on that one. If the Packers can jam on the accelerator the way they did at the end of last year, then obviously they'd be very dangerous going into the playoffs.
Okay, so basically he's sorting out the others besides the big 4. I think most people would be in agreement that the two top teams in the NFC are Detroit and Philadelphia, and in the AFC, it would be Kansas City and Buffalo. And somewhere down the road, each of them will probably face off against one another, likely in championship games, and two of the four will go to the Super Bowl. Or these other teams that are knocking on the door, could one of them get in? Could one of them be Baltimore? And could Lamar Jackson finally break through? Everything was set up perfectly last year. They played the AFC Championship game at home, didn't play very well, lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, who went on to win their second straight Super Bowl. Jeff Saturday, part of the ESPN analysis crew on our morning show on Sportsmanlike, yesterday on what Lamar is looking at right now and the pressure that he may be facing to finally get them through.
For sure. Because everybody's talking about Lamar being the reason why they're going to win, which I think isn't the truth. I think the truth is what you saw the Ravens play like last night is their only true way to the Super Bowl, and that is with Derrick Henry, 30-plus touches for their running backs, play physical. If you thought about the Steelers' loss, they when they play big games, for some reason, they lose that physicality mindset. And what you saw bring to them against the Chargers last night is what I expect them to do. Lamar is going to be Lamar. He's going to make big plays. He's going to put the ball where it should be. He's going to make your team so much better. But it doesn't have to be built around finesse and him throwing the ball 35 times. I think it should be the other way, which you saw them do last night. I was a huge fan of the way they played and was happy to see. I think they were almost 60% on third down conversion, 100% on fourth down conversion. Harbaugh was aggressive, and it played right into their hands. And, by the way, they knew the weakness of the Chargers. Chargers don't do a great job stopping the run, so why not run it, right? I mean, when you see the weakness of your opponent or where they're not the most consistent, that's where you should attack. That's the way I thought the Ravens played last night.
Yeah, I mean, we could see this on Sunday and maybe get set for like a 2-hour game, because I actually covered a game once. It was like 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was the Dolphins with Dan Marino playing the Giants, where Bill Parcells' philosophy was to take the air out of the football, run it, and he had a great defense that would take care of things, and they were forcing Marino into 3-and-outs all the time and just running it down their throats. And again, the Giants concluded that game in like 2 hours and 20 minutes, and with Barkley and Henry facing off against each other and running the ball a lot, it could be that type of game. Now, again, we get back to the MVP discussion. For a while, we were talking about Derrick Henry, even though the other player in that backfield, Lamar Jackson, has gotten a lot more attention for that. But now, with what Saquon did, running for 255 yards and rolling up the numbers to put him in position for 2,000 yards, is he a real possibility to win the MVP? This is Jeff Saturday again.
100%. This guy, think about this. This is going to be a 2,000-yard rusher this season, and the amount of explosive plays that he has for this football team. Are you telling me that there's anybody who has been more impactful on their team than Saquon Barkley? And the answer is no. And I understand the whole argument that it's quarterbacks and it's the most important position. Then let's just make that a completely different award. But if you're talking about the most valuable person or most valuable player for our game, he has played absolutely lights out. Absolutely lights out.
So, and we're talking with Jeff Saturday. I am someone that believes it should only be quarterback. I would be open to your suggestion of MVP automatically goes to quarterback, and then we have a different award.
Or let's just call it best quarterback.
Fine.
That I'm good with that, right?
Yeah.
Because when you talk about player, you got to incorporate all 21 other positions that are playing. So, if you want to just have, hey, who's the best quarterback in the league? Let's just make that award and then take the quarterbs out for the MVP. And I'm with you.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because at the end of the day,
that's what it is anyway.
Yeah, everybody's going to be, oh, this guy did this. And let's be honest, there are a lot of really good players in the NFL that will never get the attention they do. It's kind of like the Heisman. We call it the Heisman now, but it's really just a quarterback award again. So it's whatever that award is. I don't know what O'Brien Award or whatever. It's just that twice. So it's just a way to make two quarterbacks, name be more popular.
It's interesting you say that because when everybody says, well, no, it's not. Look, Charles Woodson won the Heisman. Charles Woodson played offense and special teams that year, to be fair. So the exclusive defender. Right. So I want to just follow up on something. You said something to start about the Ravens. You said, I love the way they played last night. Derrick Henry first, Lamar second, so to speak.
Yes.
If you believe Saquon is the MVP, and if you believe Derrick Henry is the reason for the Ravens, would you vote Derrick Henry over Lamar? And if you had to vote for a Raven for MVP, does Derrick Henry get it over Lamar? If you're opening up the can of worms for running backs, why would he not be second?
I would say, yes. I would say that if I had to say on their team who is going to make the difference, because Lamar is what he is, right? And listen, your offense isn't going anywhere without Lamar. So hear me in the right frame of reference. But the difference in their offense when you give Derrick Henry 20 touches as opposed to give him 30. Look at all their losses. When you don't give Derrick Henry the ball, you lose. When you give him the ball, and I know everybody's like, oh, it is a simplistic way of saying it, and I understand you're usually winning games when you're running him more, so I'm not trying to say that it's only Derrick Henry, but you give that dude totes, you're winning games, and they're explosive plays. That's the part that nobody understands, is unexpected explosive plays are truly the leading factor in why teams win and lose. The position that gives you the most of those, y'all, are running backs, because you have to script receivers to get the shots. You have to script protection to get the shots. When you hand the ball off and expect to get 4 yards and it goes for 40, it is breathing life into your offense and your defense. And again, those are unexpected, and the best players to get that are running backs.
Jeff, I hate to jump the shark, but the NFL is serving up what could be one of the best games of the year in Week 13 between Baltimore and Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, are the Eagles the best team in the league right now?
Ooh, I still think Detroit's playing the best, but I have them as going to the Super Bowl. I picked them, and I'm staying with them. I think they're continuing to get better. I mean, I think Detroit is playing – they're as hot as you can be. They're playing so well. I don't know if that's going to be sustainable though. It's a long season. You and I both know this.
It's a long time to stay hot.
Bro, it's a long time
to stay hot.
Yeah, it's a long time to do it that way. And I played on teams like that, y'all. I played on teams where week 12 we're hanging 40 and we're going in at halftime. You get to week 16 and you've sat for a week or two, and all of a sudden you're going to go on. It just changes the dynamics. So
are you saying the lines are peaking too early?
I'm just saying to sustain that type of output week in and week out in the NFL, you'd rather that be week 14, 15, 16, or now 17. You know what I mean? But you want to be going on the elevation rise of that thing, and because it's hard. It's hard to sustain when everybody's going to start giving you their best shot, because you are, quote, the best team in the league.
Yeah, and I think that's why you see quite often now wild card teams getting to the Super Bowl, that they peak at the right time. There's somewhat of desperation there at the end of the season, that they have to work hard to get in, and once they get in, they ride the momentum of that, even though they don't have a bye week. And it's only one team in each conference that gets a bye now, and I don't even know how much of an advantage that is. So yeah, certain years we'll see both of them make the Super Bowl, but I think there's something to that. And I remember Saturday playing on a Colts team, which I think started 11-0 and may have even gone out in the first round. So that's something to keep an eye on. But the conversation about two running backs possibly winning MVP, I mean, you're going back to maybe even the 70s for that. I guess Adrian Peterson was the last one to win the most valuable player. But by and large, it's a quarterback league, and it's a quarterback award. So you got two of the best going head-to-head on Sunday in Baltimore. Looking forward to that. That's a 4:30 game, and our coverage here is going to start at 4 o'clock on Sunday.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Rams coming up at 11 o'clock as we head into the Thanksgiving weekend. I'll be off on Friday. If the Commanders were playing tomorrow, I'd be working. But since they're playing Sunday, I'm taking the full weekend off. Looking forward to that. 58 years ago today, the then Redskins played at then DC Stadium. It was still named DC Stadium. RFK was shot in 1968 and 1969. It became RFK Stadium, but it opened as DC Stadium in 61. And they were playing a division game against the New York Giants. Y.A. Tittle had retired. Earl Morrall, who was brought in, was hurt. And they had a backup quarterback by the name of Tom Kennedy, who had bounced around the minor leagues, had been signed by the Giants when Morrall got hurt, and this was the only start of his career. Not a great start when your team gives up 72 points, and some of it is your fault with turnovers, which resulted in points. But what's really stunning about the final score here, and again, it's the highest scoring game in NFL history, you just look at Kennedy's stats. They're not good. He was intercepted 3 times, sacked 4 times, but he did throw for 165 yards, which was amazingly 20 more yards than Sonny Jurgensen. Sonny Jurgensen, a Hall of Fame quarterback known for slinging the football. You'd think for a team that scores 10 touchdowns that Sonny would have bigger stats than that. And wasn't bad stats, but 10 of 16, 145 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was sacked twice. And he did throw for more than half of that on 1 throw. 1 touchdown, went for 74 yards. What happened was just an offensive and defensive nightmare, obviously, for the Giants. But game starts, A.D. Whitfield, running back, 5-yard pass from Sonny. Charlie Gogolak misses the extra point, and you might be thinking, oh, boy, that's going to come back to haunt them. Well, they scored again in the first quarter. A.D. Whitfield on a 63-yard run. Gogolak kicks the extra point, 13-0. Second quarter, and here's where things begin to unravel for the New York Giants. Brig Owens picks up a fumble, returns it 62 yards for a touchdown. Extra point by Gogolak, 20-0. Couldn't go for 2 in those days. Then the Giants get on the board. Alan Jacobs, 6-yard run. Pete Gogolak, Charlie's brother, kicks the extra point. Then A.D. Whitfield runs for another touchdown. It's now 27-7. Joe Don Looney, whose name absolutely fit him, played briefly for the Redskins, but played in this game, scored on a 9-yard run. Now it's 34-7. Giants respond with another touchdown, so it's 34-14 going into the half. Okay, looks like a blowout, but nothing historic brewing there, right? Third quarter, Joe Morrison catches a 41-yard pass from Gary Wood, who's now come into the game to replace Tom Kennedy, and it's, okay, 34-21. Giants could win this game, but Redskins respond. Charlie Taylor catches a 32-yard touchdown pass from Sonny. Gogolak makes the kick, 41-21. Then Homer Jones, famous for inventing the spike, goes 50 yards on a pass from Gary Wood. Now it's 41-28. We got a real shootout going here. Sonny responds. 74-yard touchdown pass to Charlie Taylor. Now it's 48-28. And then things go nuts in the fourth quarter. Ricky Harris returned a punt, 52 yards for a touchdown, 55-28. Brig Owens, who had already picked up a fumble and returned it 62 yards for a touchdown, gets a 60-yard pick six, and now it's 62-28. Aaron Thomas gets on the board with an 18-yard pass, who's Tom Kennedy's back in the game, so it's now 62-34. And then Dan Lewis on a 1-yard run makes it somewhat respectable, 62-41. But then there is the finishing kick from the Redskins.
Bobby Mitchell gets the handoff from his halfback spot. And he is gone. All the way for the touchdown. And the score is now Washington 69, New York 41. Gogolak ties an NFL record with the point after and breaks the Redskins record for extra points in one game. Now, with just 7 seconds remaining, the Redskins have the ball at the 29. Gogolak on a field goal attempt. It is good. And the score now goes to the Redskins 72, the Giants 41. Most points ever scored by 2 teams in one game in the NFL.
Why in the world would Charlie Gogolak kick a field goal with the Redskins up 69-41 in the final seconds of the game? You know, you just run out the clock. They didn't necessarily take a knee in those days, but, you know, just put the ball on the ground and get out of there with a 69-41 win. They didn't. This was Charlie Gogolak some years later and the late Sam Huff on why they went for the field goal there to make it even more miserable for the Giants.
I don't think I'd attempted a field goal the whole game because we were scoring all the time. To this day, I hear from somebody that you ran the score up on the Giants.
I was the one that called timeout. And Sonny came to the sideline. He said, "Who called timeout? What's going on?" I said, I think Charlie Gogolak needs to practice.
Okay, that file that away, what Sam said. Sam Huff said he called the timeout, and he said he thought that Gogolak needed the practice. Sam Huff had an axe to grind here. He had been traded 2 years earlier by Ali Sherman, coach and GM of the Giants, and he was not happy about that.
I loved everything about the Giants. I never wanted to be traded. My 8 years with the New York Giants, I never missed a game. I played all the preseason games. I played on all the special teams. I got knocked out. I played hurt. I did everything. Ali Sherman, I guess, for whatever reason, decides to trade the defense. Traded Roosevelt Greer the year before, Dick Modzelewski, me, Erich Barnes, all the defense.
So Sam, who carried this grudge 2 years later and gleefully talked about how he was able to get his revenge against Ali Sherman.
I took an oath that I would get even. And I did. Ali Sherman saw offense like he never saw in his life. And he was standing on the sideline over there. He was in shock when I looked over and I said, God is great. Justice is done. And it was done. 72-41.
Okay. Sam Huff went to his grave saying that he called the timeout there to kick the field goal. He also said, as you heard in that soundbite, that the reason he did it is he felt that Gogolak needed the practice. He's combining a couple of things here. That line about Gogolak needing the practice, Otto Graham said that after the game. The coach of the Redskins said he was the one who decided that Gogolak needed the practice, and that's why the timeout was called, which, of course, was ridiculous. Also, there's reason to believe that Sam didn't call the timeout, and I'll tell you why. Only the offensive captain can call timeout when they're on the field. The offensive captain that day was a guard by the name of Vince Permuta, played 10 years with the Redskins and was named one of the 70 greatest players in franchise history. And he said in later years in a podcast that I heard with Mike Richmond that he was the one that called it. And the reason that he had called it was he had grown up in New York, and they had played the Giants a couple of years before that, 3 or 4 years before that. And Y.A. Tittle had thrown 7 touchdown passes against them. And he felt like they were rolling it up on him and his team. So he was going to get revenge by adding the field goal from Charlie Gogolak to make it 72-41 instead of 69-41. I was wondering about that, so I did a little bit of research on this. And I have access to the Washington Post and the Washington Star. And I looked at the stories from the paper from that day. The Washington Post didn't have this, but Mo Siegel, who was a columnist with the Washington Star, had written about this. And in his column from this day in 1966, Mo Siegel said that Vince Permuta had called the timeout, which makes sense because as a defensive player, Huff wasn't even on the field at that point when the timeout was called, and he didn't have the ability as a defensive player on the sidelines to call the timeout. There were only 2 people who could do that. One of them was Otto Graham, and the other one was the offensive captain for the Redskins, and on that day, it was Vince Permuta. So, love Sam Huff, worked with him on the radio for a number of years, a very nice person to deal with, wonderful guy, but it really didn't happen that way. And embellishing a good story, not a bad way to go, but in reality, the timeout probably was called by Vince Permuta, and there is some documentation from the Mo Siegel column that, in fact, it was Vince Permuta that called the timeout to run up the score. But to this day, it remains the highest-scoring game in NFL history, and the numbers are just crazy. Total yards for each team under 400. 389 for the losing Giants, 341 for the Redskins. But when you have Brig Owens returning a fumble and an interception for a touchdown, that certainly helps to roll up the score. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I will be back on Monday at 9 a.m. with a full recap of what happens at Northwest Field on Sunday. Bram will be calling the game, and he's up next. Happy Thanksgiving.